The difference in between now and when I started was, I believe there was an awareness. There was a conscious awareness of the importance of diversity in the workplace. But I don't really believe that people who don't look like me understood what that meant. I need to have a person in a spot, sitting in a seat, but what's that feel like? What's the interaction? How do we come to work every day and do something besides doing the work? So strategies that I use today is I'm very conscious, and I help people on the journey who look like me, who don't look like me, to really help understand how you get that level of engagement that brings the individual's whole self to work. It feels like we're partners, that we are collaborating, that I can be my best self, they can be their best self, if you get to know them beyond what you're looking at on the surface. I think also today, with the heightened sense of everything that's going on in our social, environment, it makes people feel uncomfortable. And I think folks need to realize it's discomfort on both sides of the equation. I'm uncomfortable with what's going on when I'm watching the news, to have to come to work and anxious or holding your breath trying to figure out what is somebody else's interpretation. And I don't want to, take it personal or be upset. But I also think, in being sensitive to the people who don't look like us, who don't live and walk in our shoes every day, how they're feeling and how they're thinking about, well, I want to ask a question, but I'm not sure what to ask or how to ask. So I think that's how the dynamics have changed. Another little segue, it used to be about hair and what do you eat for Thanksgiving and things like that. And I think now it's really about, how do you feel? How do you feel? What's your level of consciousness and awareness? How do your kids feel about what's going on today? And I really think it expands beyond the workplace. It expands into our schools. And so it's a ever-evolving conversation on many, many layers that we're having right now. So it's a bigger conversation across our community in general.
Please welcome to the stage Vanessa Smith, Senior Vice President, Industries and Solution Sales, ServiceNow. Tamika McBride, VP of Sales, Sports and Fitness Business Unit, PepsiCo Beverages North America. Charlene Thomas, Chief Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Officer, UPS. Moderated by Phyllis Anderson, Board Director.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Our apologies for that technical delay that put us behind schedule just a little bit. I'm going to introduce myself and this next panel. My name is Dr. Ramian Pierre. I'm a director at the ELC's Institute for Leadership Development and Research. I'm an ally. I've been enjoying living for these conversations we've been having all day about the power of women at work, and I'm going to fill in for our moderator today for this panel on psychological safety. So with that, let me introduce our panelists very quickly. Actually, instead, I'll ask a question, have the panelists introduce themselves as they give their answer to the very first question, because we'll get right into the content. So we're talking about psychological safety. Here at the ELC, we define psychological safety as the belief that you won't be punished, that you won't be humiliated for speaking up with ideas or questions, concerns, or even for making mistakes. We'd like to hear from each one of you. If you could tell us, Charlene, Tamika, and Vanessa, how do you define psychological safety, and what are some common examples of what psychological safety look like in the workplace, or what a psychologically safe workplace looks like? Charlene, would you mind getting us started?
No problem, and thank you, Ramian. Good afternoon, everyone. Charlene Thomas with UPS. I'm the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. I do have a very strong opinion and personal story when it comes to psychological safety, because psychological safety is a two-way street. It's an environment to which employees expect, as well as employees are charged with upholding, in making sure that others feel welcome to share ideas, and also not to be burdened with personal views that don't necessarily reflect a positive and conducive environment for those to thrive in. So it's not just about sharing ideas and feeling free to share them, but it's also being exposed to things that may be hurtful or may be detrimental to individuals who are coming to work and may be experiencing those things. So we're very mindful about with our policies, with our BRGs, as well as our duty to act policy that we've done in our trainings around professionalism in the workplace to encourage folks to really speak up and really to address things through either direct or through allies, and identifying ways for us to make sure that we as a team work to keeping our workplaces safe for all.
Oh, Charlene, I love that idea of safety being a two-way street. Tamika, will you introduce yourself and talk about how you define a psychologically safe workplace?
Love it. Great. And I love Charlene's answers. Hello, everyone. Tamika McBride. I lead our Gatorade and Propel business for PepsiCo, sales and sales strategy out of Chicago. And it's awesome to be joining this my esteemed panelists here today. I'm honored to be a part of this group. So psychological safety, the first word, when I heard the topic today, psychological safety, the first word that came to mind for me was trust. And similar to Charlene, trust is it's a two-way street. Like that is something that, I feel like you have to feel it's safe, right? It's one of those things where that and you acknowledge that there is a safe room, and there's trust that that's going to happen. And vice versa. The organization is trusting you to bring your talents and bring everything that you offer to the organization to support the broader business. So this notion of trust really resonated with me because it's a relationship within your work environment. So that's the first thing that came to mind. So I thought I'd stick with that on this topic.
I like that, Tamika, particularly focusing on it. It's not just a thing that you have or don't have that you can purchase or buy or build into the environment, but it's a relationship. It's an action. It's activity. Thank you for that. Vanessa, could you introduce yourself and describe how you define a psychologically safe workplace?
Absolutely. First, I want to thank you all for having me. I've heard the conference has been amazing all day, and I just feel privileged to be on a part of this panel. Vanessa Smith, I lead our industries and solution sales team for ServiceNow, a high-tech workflow company. I'm sitting here in my home office in Philadelphia. This is such an awesome topic. So I think the first part of your question was around how do you define psychological safety? And I think about kind of four things when I think about it. So first, being a part of an environment or operating in an environment where your opinion feels valued, right? So you've got to feel like there's value in what you have to say. Second, an environment where people are invited to contribute. And I think that word invited is so important. To create a psychologically safe environment, people have to feel like they want to be heard and they get invited to the conversation. You've got extroverts, you've got introverts, you've got people with different styles. So you really need to create that invitation to speak and to be heard. The third is an environment that doesn't have negative repercussions if you say something that's unpopular or potentially could be seen as a derailer. And you've got to really make sure that those negative repercussions aren't explicit, of course, but also implicit. So what happens after that meeting, after someone speaks up? What has happened to their brand or how they're treated following what I'd call a courageous conversation? And then last but not least, I think you've got to demonstrate a psychologically safe environment in action. You've got to role model that behavior as a leader, allowing folks to speak up and maybe even fail fast and encouraging them to get up and try again. And organizations that do that, I find, are able to grow, have a growth mindset, and actually win in the marketplace.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa, for talking about how psychological safety is, in fact, in action. Thank you for the growth mindset. Shout out to Carol Dweck. We're big fans of that work here at the ELC. And thank you for all of you for giving us a foundation, level setting how we define psychological safety. Let's get into what happens when places aren't safe and we want to restore safety. Let's talk about restoring safety. So We know that when people don't feel safe, that they may withdraw, they may go silent, they may get angry. As people leaders, it's our job to figure out a way to bring them back to the normal, bring them back to the middle. What have you all seen in terms of ways that safety can be restored on teams? Charlene, you started off last time, but Tamika, maybe you can kick us off with, how do you restore safety when you observe that people on your team are being defensive or withdrawn or just aren't feeling safe?
Yeah, I mean, number one, inquire, right? I think the one-on-ones are powerful, in my opinion, for so many reasons. Number one, just because it's a safer space when there's not, it feels like less judgment when it's a one-on-one conversation. We all know that is, it's just a unique opportunity to be able to get someone's full perspective. And when you have that one-on-one, you can ask someone like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Is there anything that you want to talk about? Like, asking those probing questions can help someone open up and get to a space. And maybe you might have to start during a one-with-one. Like, can I tell you something that has personally been on my mind that I'd love to just share with you? So you're showing the vulnerability first as the people leader, to allow that other person to then also be vulnerable back with you. So I think that the technique of leverage that one-on-one time, you'll have a more authentic conversation. And then depending on the severity of the situation, you determine, do you need to be vulnerable first to build the trust that I mentioned before? Or can you just ask some questions so that a person feels safe to open up?
I like that. Asking questions, listening, inquiring, and making the first move is a way of restoring safety for others. Yeah. Vanessa, how about you? How can you restore safety when you notice that people have withdrawn or have gotten defensive?
Well, I have to say, I was listening to Tamika's response and it was spot on with where I was going to go with it. But maybe just to be additive here, I think first, acknowledging there's a problem. When people are withdrawn or defensive, sometimes you got to put it out there and start the conversation with, something's not feeling right. We're not on the right wavelength. So acknowledging that problem. Second, as Tamika mentioned, the one-on-one conversations are where people will most likely open up. Or if it's at the team level, something that I've employed or done is do a kind of tell me anything or ask me anything type of session. By labeling the session with those words and terms, people come into the conversation knowing that either you want to share, you want to learn, or hopefully it's bi-directional. So those kind of ask me, tell me anything sessions. Being intentional about knowing you're getting into one of those difficult and courageous conversations. And finally, letting the person know that their voice is valued. I know I've had people on teams of mine in the past where, for whatever reason, they've gotten withdrawn. Maybe it's because it's a lack of a psychologically safe environment, but simply telling them that the company, the organization is losing out by not hearing your voice and it's valued. Telling them that directly, I think, changes the tone and pace that they want to be heard.
Great. I love that, being intentional and direct. And I love your first point about just acknowledging that something might not be working here, because I know sometimes we wonder, is it me or is it the environment? Am I crazy or is there something broken here? So at least taking that question out of the conversation so you can restore safety, that's a great first step. Charlene, for you, what are ways that you've seen either other leaders or you yourself as a people leader restore safety?
So such great comments. I want to just press into one thing that was just previously mentioned, an intent to heal. I definitely think that, when you're in a group that is not either performing or is having some challenges, it's really authentically trying to help the team or individual self-solve. Because once you step away, they have to be able to exist and thrive in that environment. And with intention to heal, They're going to maybe share some uncomfortable things. They may make a comment or a statement about someone on the team. And as a people leader coming with the intention to heal, you're asking for permission to address, not to utilize names, but preserve that person's confidentiality, but really, really really exercise what the issue is and not make it personal, and really make that issue the issue that everyone needs to solve and bring a solution to and for. And that make that one of the ground rules when the team meets. I mean, if it's something that they've kind of, they should conquer as a team, they want to stay conquered. So they have to be mindful they have that vulnerability, but with that intent to self-heal as a team is so important, because people really, that the value of teams is really the strength of which it's able to just work together and overcome challenges, because that really builds momentum, and more importantly, it builds stronger teams. So that's the only thing I would add to that.
Oh, I love that. I'm stealing the phrase self-heal. I will be using it repeatedly. So I'm warning my team back at the office. And what I really love about that concept is the cure is not going to be more damaging than the original harm, right? You're making sure you're not making things worse by getting consent, by empowering people instead of taking their problem and fixing it for them. So I really love that piece to it. We've gotten a couple of questions from the audience, from people watching, and so I want to weave those into the conversation. And the first one comes from Nadia. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She wants to ask, how do you talk to a leader who's not making you feel safe? So the question is this: how do you tell a leader that you don't feel psychologically safe? What words do you say? Have any of you had that experience where you've had to express that you don't feel safe, or had someone express to you that they don't feel safe? What words or what tips can you give folks in our audience about how they might express themselves if they find themselves in that situation?
I'm sure I'll jump in here, and I feel like I've mentioned this once or twice already in my prior responses, but I actually do have someone on my team who was feeling like there were some actions and behaviors on her team that were creating a psychologically unsafe environment. And she wanted to share that with me to get support and feedback and advice. And the way she approached the situation with me, I thought was brilliant. Now I use it all the time. She said, Vanessa, I'd like to have a courageous conversation with you. And by her simply teeing up the word that she was being courageous, put me in a mindset and readiness to listen, that she's thought a lot and she's intentional about coming to me, and that she's looking for support and help with dealing with this challenge of having her team feel like they're not in a psychologically safe environment. So even that simple step of those words of her needing to be courageous made a big difference. It opened my mind up. It stopped me from becoming defensive. And it also allowed me to put myself in the mindset of, as a leader, I want to be courageous, and helping her solve. I love that intention to heal the team. So I think just a simple words of advice there, talking about courageous conversations. Now it's interesting. I hear that once or twice a month now around people going to other people in the organization around having a courageous conversation. And the cool thing about it is the implicit nature of it is it's a positive conversation versus negative, or a workout session, or some of these other titles that we've used in the past to talk about tough topics.
Oh, I love it. Courageous conversation, using those words helps put you as the hearer and then probably as the speaker in a more safer mindset. I love that. Anyone else want to respond to this question about how you actually express that you don't feel safe?
I really don't have any builds on that. Vanessa said it so well. I know we have women across multiple organizations that are participating in this session. So if you haven't heard the term courageous conversation, We do use that term even at PepsiCo, I'll admit. It sounds like it's used at ServiceNow, which Vanessa just mentioned. I'm imagining at UPS as well. So if you haven't heard the term, though, it's something to look into. Just leveraging those words, like Vanessa said, I can't say it any better than she said it, does take some of the sting out of a tough topic to have that conversation. So I echo the comments that Vanessa made. I think they're spot on.
Oh, thank you. There's another question that we got from a listener. I think it's from Marlene, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And she's asking about how you can, I think, create a culture across an organization that even if you make it safe for a team, how might we expand that across the organization? The question is this, is how do you encourage psychological safety across all of an organization? Do any of you have insights into how that might be done? How can we encourage that, promote that, foster that?
I'll take a stab at it. I think it really starts at the top. I think, really making sure your direct reporter, your CEO, is really aware of kind of what the issues are, and really asking each leader to really champion within their teams the ability to have courageous conversations, making sure that everyone feels free to either send an email anonymously, because again, there's people that are at various points of their career and various points in life, but there needs to be a way to communicate to the leader, without fear of repercussion, that there may be an unhealthy condition there, and really making sure that that leader, and we have town hall calls and we have real talk sessions to where we ask people to join, not on Zoom but on a conference call. We don't know who's asking the call, we don't know who's posing the question, and we have had such a great reception to that, where, and it is, and I recall one session with a president where the HR leader had to really put the president on notice to say, hey, look, you responded to that in a way that was insensitive. And she did it in a way to where it was a bias, it was a blind spot that was kind of uncovered, but rather to be a defensive, help me better understand what from what perspective do I need to really hear this to better understand, serve, or even help the group work through this challenge. So I found that way works extremely well with having these platforms where people can dial in, without identification, and really bring some tough questions to leaders. And sometimes it's the table for the group to kind of chew on, and sometimes there's not an answer. But it's more about a healthy way for the group to realize that these are things going on and that we need to embrace and address, not ignore, and be sensitive to how this could be impacting the group, and really, work towards just a better understanding of what impacts people daily in their work life.
I love the idea that it starts at the top and then you need to push it down throughout the whole organization. I love the idea of using multiple platforms. I'd already forgotten about conference calls. I feel like in the last 2 years, I haven't used my phone in that way at all. I'm not sure if I'm the only one. And I appreciate that, the idea of using platforms that allow people to ask tough questions in anonymous ways if they need to. Thank you for that, Charlene. Let's use that as an opportunity to move from sort of the strategic definition level to behaviors. Let's talk about behaviors that you've seen that people can practice to promote safety for them on their teams, or to advocate for safety. So the question is this. I'll set it up by saying that wanting an environment to be safe, that's all in my head as a leader. I need to find a way to make that explicit, and I do that through behavior or other sorts of signaling. What have you all seen in terms of the signaling that an environment is safe from leaders? What can leaders done to explicitly make it clear that this environment is safe, other than just saying this is a safe place? How do they make that real?
I'll take that one first. There's two things come to mind for me personally on this one. I think number one is demonstrating concern for the team. So it goes back to maybe even some comments I made earlier about those one-on-one conversations, asking people, how are you doing? What's working well? What are some things that you're not feeling great about? Asking those types of questions. I think demonstrating that concern, it's really important as a leader. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day business and just going 100 miles an hour on the business, but take a breath, remember the human element, and ask people, how are you doing? And I think it just goes a long way. So that's one, the demonstrating concern for the team. The second one, and it's really powerful as a people leader, is owning up and acknowledging a mistake. There's nothing that helps people understand that human element and understanding that that vulnerability and that everything doesn't have to be perfect than when a leader says, you know what, my bad, I messed that up. If I had that to do over, there's a couple things I would do differently. And so owning a mistake as a leader is a powerful way to help other people feel safe and feel like they can bring their opinion and their values to the forefront.
I want to underline, double check mark, click on twice, if I could, that my bad. Just two simple words. It seems so easy, but it gets really hard as a people leader. I'll speak for myself, and maybe this is true for others, that we're taught to stop saying sorry, stop saying, apologizing for being in the room. But sometimes that ends up being translated into we don't admit when we make mistakes, because we've been socialized to be strong and firm and brave. But in the downside is that we end up creating this impression that we're not willing to tolerate mistakes, right?
Right.
Okay, others besides saying my bad, owning mistakes, what other behaviors might leaders practice to explicitly signal that environment is safe for their employees?
Yeah, maybe I can add a couple more things, because I agree wholeheartedly with the responses from Charlene and Tamika. So this idea that your success as a leader is their success. I, in a very recent situation where we've reorganized the company, and I have someone now working for me who used to be working directly for our boss. So she feels like she's been leveled, right? This kind of, moved down a level in the organization. And just implicitly, that causes a bit of a psychologically unsafe environment from the get-go. Here I am, the new leader of the team. The person feels like they've got leveled below me. And so this idea of coming to her one-on-one, flying to her location in the city that she works in on her turf, to break bread with her and share with her that her success is my success. Now, that's not the only thing it's taken and will take. We started out the conversation talking about the word trust. And I just go back to one of my mentors, who also happens to be the CEO of our company, always says that trust is gained in drips and lost in buckets. So if I think about creating a psychologically safe environment, you can make those initial gestures that we've all talked about, but the consistency of follow-up, the consistency of those conversations is also key to building that trust.
I'm stealing that one too, drips and buckets. And that makes a lot of sense. That came up earlier in our conversations about branding today, how important consistency is there. It's great to also see how important consistency is for building trust. And you said something else too that I want to amplify, on their own turf. It's not only seems important what you do and what you say, but where you say it actually sends a message too. Whether you do it on your terms, your turf, or on their turf probably makes it more safe for them, right?
100%.
Oh, this is great. What else do we have in terms of behaviors? I'd love to get one more in before we go to the probably our last questions.
So I'm just so I'm really struck by the conversation around meeting people where they are, and really establishing from your invested interest in them and helping them achieve, and really putting them in positions where they can shine and giving them exposure. Again, that exposure and sometimes is so much more important, and prepping and just edifying is such a trust and confidence builder. And it's just a game changer when it comes to inclusion and folks feeling as though this is a place where I think I can succeed. It doesn't mean they're going to get promoted. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get a raise. But do I feel that in my role, I'm valued and that my boss is willing to take me into a meeting to observe or even present on a topic to which I am the expert? And he or she is allowing me to not only present the material, but to own it and to take the time to make sure that I'm prepared, and that I'm well socialized with the group so that they're very receptive and engaged, and to really allow me to kind of blossom and feel as though that, this conversation, this relationship is one that I feel very, I'm purposeful in this organization. I'm valued. I am allowed to show and grow my strengths to my group and beyond. And I do that on a rotational basis. So I make sure that all of my team gets exposure to different leaders throughout the organization so that they are very mindful of the work they do and how meaningful it is beyond themselves.
I love that, Charlene, that these stretch opportunities give people, employees, our team members, a chance to own work, but more importantly, to feel valued. That's what really makes them safe, that value feeling, and to grow. So last question, sorry for such a short amount of time here, but this is for folks who have tried these things. They've tried to make it work in terms of creating safe environments, and they're running into obstacles, running into brick walls. I'm not sure what it might be, but what advice do you have for women today who, despite all their attempts to achieve or to restore psychological safety, have been unable to do so? What then? What advice would you give women in that case?
I feel like this is maybe similar advice I'd give in other situations, but this reinforces the need to have allies, sponsors, and mentors. Sometimes your direct boss, that relationship's not working. And if you've exhausted everything from the courageous conversations to the one-on-ones and all the potential tactics to break through, this is where you got to go outside of that relationship to ask for the help. For all you know, there's other people who feel the same way. So reach out to your ally, to your sponsor, to your mentor, get advice and ask them for their support. I think that's super important. The last thing that I'll say, and maybe going back to Charlene's answer earlier around like, how do you measure, a psychologically safe environment? If you've got a good relationship with your HR organization, we at ServiceNow do twice annual employee voice surveys, which give that anonymous way to give feedback. That's your way of giving feedback to your direct manager, with it maybe being collated with other people on your team who may feel the same way. And we actually publish something called a leadership trust score, which allows leaders to really self-reflect on, are they doing things such as creating that psychologically safe environment? So if you don't see your HR team employing some of these tools and incentives, leave this meeting today and bring those ideas to the table.
I love it. Get help from your squad, from allies and sponsors, mentors, or HR. Other advice? All right, I think we're in a good spot. So let me say this. I got pulled in at the last minute. Thank you all for making this a psychologically safe environment for me to pull some of your amazing wisdom and to share it with our attendees. We really value your contributions. I'll double click on trust came up, intentionality came up, not doing this work alone in terms of making places psychologically safe came up. Any other things you want to highlight before we say goodbye and transition to the next session? All right.
Thank you for being such a great moderator at the last minute. You're
That's what I was going to say,
Thank you.
Ramian. Thank you, Ramian.
Nice seeing you again, Ramian. Take care.
Nice seeing you. You're all too kind. Thank you so much, and thank you, everyone. Stay with us and keep enjoying the power of women at work. We have some more sessions to share.